Hello, today we have three interesting stories. First story. Title: My wife is constantly texting with a school colleague. We've been married for 3 years, and we recently moved across the country for my wife's grad school. I secured a job in our new city and have been the primary financial provider. Lately, I've noticed my wife is constantly on her phone. When I asked her about it, she mentioned she's texting a school friend. She becomes defensive if I probe further. Unsure what to do, I looked through her phone and discovered she's been texting a male classmate from morning until midnight every day. While the messages aren't sexual, some aspects are troubling. The texting began when she asked another friend for his number and initiated contact. She consistently texts him first and often double texts if he doesn't reply. I've never met this guy or even know what he looks like. Their conversations are mostly casual, about school and other daily topics. They spend a lot of time together at school, often playing card games. My wife has even left our dinners early to meet him for games. She also arranges one-on-one outings with him at various places like bars. What's more, she baked cookies specifically for him. One day, she made a special trip to the store in the rain, baked the cookies, and took them to his apartment, staying there for a couple of hours before briefly attending a party. Another concern of mine is the financial aspect. Coming from a privileged background, my wife is used to a certain lifestyle and is studying for a career that pays much more than mine. This guy is in the same high-paying field, which adds another layer to my worries. Discovering these texts left me feeling uneasy. I haven't found evidence of a physical affair, but it feels like some emotional boundaries have been crossed. How should I approach this situation? Update. After discovering my wife's frequent communication with a classmate, I managed to get his contact details from her phone and reached out to him. I introduced myself as her husband and asked if he could share his side of the story. He agreed, and we met for lunch at a public location. He's a 23-year-old guy, and admittedly, quite good-looking. At lunch, he was upfront, stating nothing physical had happened between them, a point I felt inclined to believe given his demeanor. He emphasized that he never intended to get involved with a married woman. He recounted the events from his perspective, starting from when he first met her. He was initially attracted to my wife and approached her without knowing she was married, as he hadn't thought to look for a wedding ring, given his age group usually isn't married. She reciprocated his interest with no hints of being in a relationship. After learning about his job offer, she congratulated him enthusiastically. As they continued to chat over the next few days, he asked for her Instagram. She hesitated but eventually shared it, and that's when he realized she was married, which shocked him because of her flirtatious behavior. After stepping back, he heard from friends that she was offended he had distanced himself upon discovering her marital status. After avoiding her for a month to avoid drama, he decided to extend a friendly compliment to clear the air, which she took as a signal that they were friends again, something he found odd. Her text started as infrequent but soon became daily, with her often initiating contact twice. She seemed keen on him meeting her parents during their visit, an invitation he found awkward and avoided. Despite trying to maintain distance, he admitted that he gradually became receptive to her attention. She invited him to hang out one-on-one, play cards, and even baked cookies specifically for him. She expressed disappointment over a cancelled Thanksgiving trip and mentioned frequently sleeping on the couch. Their communication slowed during finals and winter break but picked up again with the new semester, becoming more frequent than ever. He felt she might have genuine feelings for him, enjoying the attention but conflicted due to her marital status. This conversation confirmed my suspicions and mirrored the texts I had read. It seems like she might be playing a long game, possibly setting up a scenario where she could leave our marriage for him. I appreciate his honesty and willingness to meet, which helps me see the situation more clearly. Unfortunately, this feels like a point of no return for our marriage. I plan to confront her about this, but I'm not optimistic about reconciling. This might be the end of our relationship. Second update. Yesterday, I had the decisive conversation with my wife, and it marked the end of our relationship. Surprisingly, the guy she had been texting didn't warn her about our meeting, which I appreciated. I sat her down at the dining room table and confronted her about her interactions with this guy, detailing every aspect of what I considered an emotional affair. I mentioned the secretive cookie baking, her eagerness to have him meet her parents, the constant texting, and how she had presented him merely as a friend. When I expressed my belief that she might be obsessed or even in love with him, possibly viewing him as my replacement, she broke down and started crying. Part of me felt a pang of sympathy, but another part felt justified in my actions. She tried to explain that she was only drawn to the attention he gave her and promised to cut all ties with him immediately. Despite her tears and offers to seek couples therapy, I felt it was too late to salvage our marriage. The depth of the emotional connection she had formed was a deal-breaker for me, regardless of whether it had become physical. I told her I would be contacting an attorney and advised her to do the same. Then I left the house to clear my head as she tried to follow me, pleading. While I was out, she bombarded me with calls and texts, but I didn't respond. Upon returning, I found her still visibly upset. Her parents also tried to reach out to me today, but I chose not to engage with them either. I haven't asked her to move out yet as I'm still processing everything and deciding on the best course of action. The reality of our sudden breakup is sinking in, and it feels surreal. I relocated to this state solely to support her pursuit of grad school, leaving behind my friends and family. Now, I'm left questioning everything. Perhaps there were signs I overlooked. Our relationship had its flaws, I've been consumed with work, and she seemed to seize every opportunity to attend school events without me, always justifying her absences with studying. While I recognize that not all the blame lies with her, I'm relieved to be moving on before things deteriorated further. Although 3 years might not be a long time, it's significant enough to make this separation challenging. Now, it's time for me to rediscover myself, even though the circumstances are far from ideal. This situation is painful, but it's necessary to close this chapter of my life. Second story. Title: Am I wrong for denying my husband a 2-week vacation? My husband and I have been married for 12 years and have 2 children together, one of whom has special needs. We live close to my hometown in Europe, while his family is scattered across the U.S. In the past, we managed annual visits to the U.S., but with rising living costs and the added expenses of traveling with kids, these trips have become less feasible. Recently, my husband's longing to see his family has intensified, particularly as he's been grappling with depression. Last year, he expressed a desperate need to visit his hometown. He wanted us all to go, but financial constraints and my limited vacation days made that impossible. I suggested he go alone, leading to a disagreement about the length of his stay. I proposed a week and a half, but he insisted on more and ultimately booked a trip for 2 weeks and 4 days without agreeing with me. To accommodate his absence, I had to rearrange my night and 12-hour shifts, working 7 days a week before and after his trip. While he was away, I managed 80% of my work hours and cared for our children solo, sacrificing sleep and personal time. When he returned, I was not only physically exhausted but also frustrated with how he handled the trip, feeling his apology was more about dismissing the issue than genuine remorse. That summer, we couldn't afford any vacations or activities for the kids because of the financial strain. A few months later, my husband expressed a desire to visit his brother in Hawaii. Given our finances, I was skeptical about affording the $5,000 airfare. He suggested traveling alone again. I firmly stated that more than a week was too much for me to handle on my own, and he needed to save up rather than deplete our shared vacation fund. Despite both of us working full-time and earning roughly the same, he often works extended hours and leaves me to manage the household and children, making me feel like a single parent. Recently, he asked about booking a 2-week trip to Hawaii. I reminded him that I had agreed to only 1 week, which led to another argument. He argued that 1 week wasn't worth the expense. Ultimately, he informed his family, including his parents who planned to meet him there, that he wouldn't be visiting, casting me in an unreasonable light. I'm now questioning whether I was too restrictive about the Hawaii trip. Should I encourage him to take his 2-week vacation while I have time off in the summer, or should I prioritize planning a family vacation just for us? Update. Since my last update, several things have unfolded that have added complexity to my situation. About a week ago, I received a message from a stranger on Messenger, informing me that my husband had been sending inappropriate messages to his girlfriend. He described the messages as flirtatious, mentioning that my husband had complimented her and offered gifts like flowers and massages, particularly poignant since this conversation occurred right around Valentine's Day, a time when I and the kids were out buying gifts for him. Later that day, my husband suspiciously asked if anyone had contacted me, which I avoided answering initially to keep the atmosphere calm for the kids. Once they were asleep, we had a serious discussion. He confessed to jokingly offering flowers to this woman after she commented on a social media post about the flowers he had bought for me. He showed me recent messages where she had pointed out that his flirtation was inappropriate, but he carefully managed what I could see on his phone. Driven by a need to know more, I scrolled through their messages back to 2020 and shockingly discovered a photo of her in her underwear. While my husband is a professional photographer, and such shoots might be part of his job, we had previously agreed that he would avoid such intimate settings, making this discovery particularly upsetting. Our confrontation escalated as he snatched the phone away, refusing to let me see more and stating he would never demand to see my phone in such a manner. We ended up having a lengthy discussion about our marriage, where I voiced my considerations of divorce and we both expressed desires for changes in our relationship. He agreed to start couples therapy and seek individual therapy to address his childhood issues. In the days following our talk, he made an effort to improve his behavior, although I noticed him slipping back into old habits. He later mentioned a coworker who had joked about him being involved with his models, suggesting that the initial message I received might have been influenced by these jokes. Despite these reassurances, the seeds of doubt remain planted. Just recently, he brought up his previously mentioned trip to Hawaii. Considering his mental health and the importance of his presence for our children, I agreed to let him go for 10 days instead of the 7 we initially discussed. He booked his tickets but made an error, resulting in the tickets needing to be rebooked, which will delay any potential refund for 4 to 6 weeks. Reflecting on all of this, I question whether I'm being naive. While I want to believe him and hope that therapy will help us navigate these issues, part of me wonders if I should have pushed harder for immediate changes rather than hoping for gradual improvement. Am I being too lenient for the sake of keeping our family intact? What would you do in my situation? Third story. Title: Am I the A for not telling my boyfriend I won money 15 years ago? I found myself in a bewildering financial disagreement with my boyfriend of a year and a half, and I'm not sure if I did something wrong. My boyfriend moved into my house unexpectedly 3 months ago after his landlord needed the property back. Recently, we decided to align on our financial situations. During our discussion, I mentioned how I came to own my home. I explained that I won some money in 2009, which allowed me to buy my house at a great price during the recession, put myself through nursing school, and save a bit. I've been financially prudent since then. I'm a nurse, I own my home and car outright, and I have solid retirement savings. Despite this, he accused me of deceiving him into thinking I was more financially savvy and well off than I am, which baffles me because I've been transparent about my finances and lifestyle. He expressed that he felt he couldn't trust me anymore, claiming I had given him financial advice that led him astray. The only advice I ever gave was discouraging him from buying an expensive, unreliable car. His reaction left me confused. Had I really deceived him by not disclosing the exact origins of my financial stability sooner? The situation escalated quickly over the course of a single day. After his initial accusations, we had another odd conversation where his true colors began to show. He seemed overly interested in the exact amount of my savings and even suggested I should buy him the expensive car for his birthday in March as a way to make amends. It was clear to me then, he was more interested in my money than in our relationship. I decided then that I would end things with him, but I planned to wait until my family could be with me for support. His behavior worsened. He expressed jealousy over how I had initially acquired my money, suggesting he could have done better with it. He ranted about my investment choices, criticizing me for not using my savings to generate more money through high-risk investments, something I'm not comfortable with despite his insistence that he could help me make real money. As the day went on, his rants turned angrier and more delusional. He accused me of wasting my potential by not aggressively investing my money. By the time I suggested taking a break from the argument to preserve my peace during my days off, he was beyond reason. Reflecting on his reactions, it became apparent that he had assumed I was wealthier than I am based solely on my property ownership. Discovering the true modesty of my means seemed to disappoint him initially, but learning about my savings reignited his scheming, this time proposing he manage my investments. This series of revelations has solidified my decision to break up with him. His materialistic and manipulative demeanor has shown me his true priorities, and it's clear that our values deeply conflict. Update. Following the tumultuous arguments and revelations about my ex-boyfriend's intentions and behavior, I decided it was time to end the relationship. To ensure my safety, I arranged for my sisters and brother-in-laws to be present. When I asked him to leave, he became very angry and argumentative. During our confrontation, my family efficiently packed up all his belongings and placed them in his car. Most of his larger items were already in storage, so it didn't take long. He was in disbelief that I was breaking up with him over what he trivialized as a little thing, despite his days-long tirade of yelling and ranting at me. Eventually, he left and moved back into his parents' house. His parents reached out to me to understand what had transpired. I explained everything, and they agreed that the breakup was for the best. In the days that followed, he bombarded me with calls and texts, oscillating between regret and fury. Then, a friend of his, Mike, called me. My ex had been telling people that he broke up with me because I was cheating, which was absurd. I clarified the real circumstances to Mike, who wasn't surprised to hear about my ex's financial troubles and his recent significant losses in trading. This explained his erratic behavior and obsession with high-risk investments. Mike warned me about my ex's history of reacting poorly to breakups and advised me to change my locks, a suggestion that proved prescient. A few days later, my ex broke into my house and incredibly, defecated on my kitchen counter. He was caught in the act and arrested. I've since updated my security system and changed all access codes. He tried to claim to the police that he still lived in the house, but obviously, his actions said otherwise. He spent a night in jail and was later bailed out by his parents, who once again reached out to apologize. I've informed them that I wish no further contact and am currently obtaining a protection order against him. This experience has been utterly shocking. I've never dealt with such extreme behavior before, and it's been a stark reminder of the importance of knowing who you're really with. Now, I'm focusing on moving forward and ensuring my and my family's safety.